Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it? You already know. Like a torta with some bad habits. Bye up, bye up. Let's get straight to this intro. Welcome back to the channel. And if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do that. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directed in the direction of the dope content that I stay kicking. And I appreciate the support. I'm very humbled by it. So I get asked a lot of questions, and some I can answer and some I can't. That's just transparency and honesty and all that. You know, when it comes to prison, I can only tell you the stories about what I was involved in, when I was there, the era that I lived through. What's going on now? Hey, I pay no never mind. I'm not on that yard functioning. That's not my business. But a question that I get asked over and over again, it becomes redundant, is why the end of hostilities in the California state prison system has not changed the streets. Meaning, why are Northerners and Southerners in the California prison system functioning together, but they don't do that on the streets? Why is there still drama on the internet? Why are people woofing on each other, disrespecting each other? Why is there this big beef on the streets? Yet in prison, it's a whole different story. And you'll notice that a lot of people will utilize that. They'll say, hey, why are you going to be a stupid ass and beef here on the streets and kill each other just to go into the California prison system and play handball together, right? Well, let me explain to you, to the best of my knowledge, what is exactly going on. That old saying, the inside controls the outside, is verifiable. That's real, right? But when it seems it comes to the end of hostilities, it doesn't extend to the streets, nor does it extend to county jails, right? Receptions, none of that. Why is that? Why doesn't it extend? You would think that, hey, if you're going to get along in there where it counts, why can't you get along out here where it counts as well, right? The reason is very simple. See, there's a common goal in the California prison system. It's the convict versus the administration. And best believe the administration treats everybody equally like shit. Okay, doesn't matter if you're a Norteño, a Sureño, Southsider, Crip, Blood, Wood, whatever, Uso, they're going to treat you bad. You're going to get what you got coming sometimes. You know, they utilize their power to control the yards as far as who goes in and outside of those yards, who lands on certain yards. You know, the administration, meaning the cops, they have a lot to do with placing people in certain areas or on certain yards where they should not be. Now, around 2010, things started to happen in the California prison system that changed everything. And what started to happen even prior to 2010, I just give 2010 as a foundation, right? But you had a thing where there was a big influx of dropouts, people that were defecting from their gangs from every side, North, South, Bulldogs, Woods, Bloods, Crips, guys that were figuring it out that, hey, they were tired of the politics. They were tired of being on lockdown all the time. And look, more so than anything, they were tired of getting extensions on their time, missing visits, missing packages, missing them incentives, those little bit of incentives that they wanted, right? They were tired of it. So a lot of dudes started to roll it up, started to believe that if they went to the S&Y yards or on the other side, that it would be easier, that they would be able to function better and they would be able to program. Now, it didn't mean that their gangbanging mentality was stopping. It didn't mean that they were trying to take the easy way out. They just got frustrated and tired. Just like those guys that were slammed in the back, the active members that were slammed in the back in those indeterminate shoes were tired of being there. 30 years in those dungeons. There's guys who did 30, 35 plus years slammed down on the indeterminate shoe programs, meaning they were never going to get to see the light of day, period. And a lot of those guys are lifers. A lot of those guys are doing life without the possibility of parole. They're LWOPers. A lot of them are doing buku Buck Roger dates, right? And so for you to be in a fucking area where you can't see nothing, it starts to play on your mind. It starts to play on your body. Your health starts to deteriorate. All these different things start to happen, right? So these guys figured, you know what? We need to get up out of here. So they created the end of hostilities to be able to fight back with the administration that was keeping them controlled by giving them these indeterminate shoes, validating them and giving them these shoes. And look, the validation process was not an easy process in the back in the days. You know, that you need 3 points to get validated. And best believe in the beginning, it was hard for them to validate people. And then it started to become easier and easier. And they could validate you for a picture, for association with a gang member, for a writing, a drawing, anything, for word of mouth, people writing 1030s, people writing these forms that they place on people saying that these guys are gang members, people dropping kites. And with just those few things, they could validate you. The process has to go through Sacramento, which is the capital. And you could fight your validation packet and all that. But once it's put in 99% of the time, you're going to get validated. And immediately that gave you an indeterminate shoe because you are now a validated prison gang member or associate. And you were getting all day, every day in the shoe. So the way to fight back was to create hunger strikes, create controversy, create unification, create something that CDC had never seen, not in a long time, was all these different factions, all these different gangs, all these different organizations coming together with the common understanding that they were fighting one enemy and one enemy only, and that was the administration. Okay, so that was a prison thing. They gained benefits from that. They got out of the indeterminates. They were placed on yards. They were giving freedoms, the freedoms that they should have been given in the first place, right? Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, they fucked that off by what they were doing in there. Still, at the rate, the alarming rate that they were validating people, anyone who they felt had influence or even a certain tattoo, they would get them off the yard immediately or as quickly as possible, right? Because they felt they had too much influence. And they felt that if they slammed these guys in the back, that was going to change something. It did not change much, right? It made it worse because now you have disgruntled individuals that are in the back for nothing, still controlling the main lines. So with that being said, the end of hostilities was a great thing because it showed a unified effort on behalf of convicts of different ethnicities, race, color lines, genders, but I mean, not genders, because fuck, there's a different gender, that's crazy, but different gangs, right, could come together with a common understanding and a conversation and say, hey, we need to band together to fight back against these crooked policies, right? And they did, and they were able to win. Now, in doing so, that means once those guys established the end of hostilities and they signed on for it, there was rules and regulations within themselves that they had to abide by. They had to keep their word, basically. And these type of individuals that were back there that are now placed on these different level 4 yards, level 3 yards, some even level 2 and 1 yards based on points, right? Had to put their word on it. And these are not guys that take their word lightly. These are the real ones, right? And so with that being said, one of the things was, another understanding was, administration is trying to blend the non-active, the dropout yards with the active yards, and that's not going to be able to fly. Okay, not in certain yards, maybe on a 2 yard, maybe on a 1 yard, but these 3s and 4s get very dangerous, and I can never see a 3 or a 4 yard being a 50-50 type yard where half are not active and half are active. It just doesn't work that way. Okay, so these guys came to a common understanding, and I'm talking about Nortenos and Sureños, not necessarily the Woods too, but the brothers are a little bit different. But they came to a common understanding that, A, it has to be us versus them, meaning them versus non-active gang members, people who have told, people who have debriefed, people who are not in good standings for whatever reasons, whether it was a good call or a bad call. They're on the other side. That's why it's called the other side, right? And so you will see certain individuals hit the yard that are S and Y guys or whatever with this California model or whatever that the administration is trying to enforce, which of course they have an end game for that. The end game being that the more violence there is, the more documented violence there is on the prison yards, the more opportunity and air they have to take it back before a judge and show them that, hey, releasing these guys into the main line was a mistake. And hopefully by some change of law, they can get them back slammed down. And it's more so now a pride thing. It's not even it's going to help the yards or it's going to make it a safer environment for inmates. That's going to be the excuse and what they use, but it's not that. What it is, you know, people just want to control. It's all about power and control. So these guys have a mutual respect. And when people that are from the opposite yard or a non-conforming yard, non-active yard, come onto the yard, North and South will take care of business, and other groups that are considered active or general population will handle their business within the prison facility behind them walls, right? And so there's this myth that North and South are together and that they look. When I did time, there was no end of hostilities, right? I can't speak on exactly what's going on behind them walls because I don't know at this point and right now today, right? But I do know this: there was always a high level of respect between North and South. There was yards that we functioned together on, meaning they were doing their thing on their side of the yard, we were doing our thing on our side of the yard, and it was all mutual respect. If there was a beef, if there was something going down, then it really went down. But we were all on the same shared yards together, going to chow in the same buildings, on maybe on opposite sides of the prison activity yard, maybe in different yards in the whole. They kept, the whole pretty segregated. South with South, North with North. But as far as the mainline general population, certain prison yards had North and South. And there was always a big level of respect. Buenos dias, good night. A respect factor that's bar none, by far, super respect, right? And that was prior to the end of hostilities. So when the end of hostilities was implemented and it did go down, and you got to understand these hunger strikes and everything that came into play for this to be established, for them to get the attention of the media, for them to get the attention of the administration, was not only a Southern thing. It was also a Northern thing. Whites did it. Blacks participated. There was a lot of groups that participated in the hunger strikes. You hear about the Southerners and the hunger strikes a little bit more than everyone else. They're deeper. They got more numbers. But considering that every group was going to get the benefits of social status of equality, what happened was they all participated, every group, in that, right? And with that being said, they won the case. I want to say conjoined twins, a conjoined effort, a group effort of different men from different factions of different organizations, and they were able to, their wisdom and their minds were able to establish something, and their word is something that can't be broken, right? So yes, you do have Northerners and Southerners on the same prison yards, and when it comes to having to join together to eradicate or get the people that they consider no good off the yards, you'll see incidences. You've seen the one where the Bulldogs hit the yard and North, South, and other groups rushed them, right? Because the Bulldogs are the one group, the Raza group, that decided they didn't want to be a part of the end of hostilities. They didn't want to conform to that. They didn't want to work hand in hand with North and South. They chose to renegade it and do their own thing. And in doing so, they created even more animosity between themselves and the groups. Now, if you ask a Bulldog, they don't care. That's their independence. That's what they do. That's how they rock. Cool, right? You ask a Norteño and a Sureño, they are strictly business and against what the Bulldogs stand for, based upon Bulldogs were invited to the end of hostilities and did deny. They spit in the hand, basically say, no, we're good. And that right there could have messed shit up. See, a lot of people don't know. This end of hostilities could have happened 20 years ago. There was a time when the guys from down south, the organization, decided that they wanted to get from behind those walls, the same thing they did. And they reached out to a lot of groups. And everybody was on board except for the Norteños. The Norteños decided they would not work hand in hand with the opposition, nor would they have any talks, willings, and dealings with the K9, meaning the administration of the cops. Because best believe these guys had to have some type of conversation with the administration to facilitate these moves and to work it out, right? And Norteños were not doing that. Their bylaws, their constitution, based upon that, says that they can't fraternize with the enemy nor the K9, right? So they weren't willing to do that. And that was just older heads, older veteranos stuck in their ways that decided, hey, chale, we're not going to work with these guys, right? And in doing so, that kept everybody in the back. And I knew that the Southern group was not happy with that, right? They were pretty upset with that at that time. Years later, what happened was Operation Black Widow. If you remember that happening, if you know about that, certain guys were taken and given new charges, new cases, RICO'd, and sent to the feds. That left a door and an era of opportunity for the conversation to rekindle, to spark that flame, and they did. And the guys that were in control and in power in the state of California decided to conform to what was going on, to work it out, and they decided to do the end of hostilities. Now, why doesn't it translate to the streets? We got a lot of knuckleheads on the streets. You got a lot of people that are hard-headed, that don't care about the politics. See, look, I'm going to be honest with you. In prison, whether you care about the politics or not, you're going to go by them. You're going to abide by the rules, because if not, you're going to get stretched out and meta-flighted up out of there. Everybody's going to participate, or you're going to roll it up and get the fuck out of there, whether it's by the knife or by the heart attack, one or the other. That's how it is, right? So what happens is you got a lot of guys that hate politics. They hate functioning the way they have to, or the way they're forced to. Some people see it as force. When I was incarcerated, I seen it as the way of life. It just was what it was, right? But you have a lot of guys on the streets, gang members, that are just focused on their barrio. They're focused on their group, and they haven't been to prison, or they don't care about the politics. They are against it. They don't even conform or like it, right? And so it's at the point where whatever they've created, that separation, whatever's going on in prison between North and South is not on the streets. Now, I'm sure if a filter went out, if someone decided, hey, enough is enough, someone that had status and the power and the charisma and the education to create a WILA and say, hey, this is what it is, then that's what it would be. But that hasn't been done. And I believe the way the streets are ran are the way the streets are ran for a reason. I don't know that reason, nor would I put that reason on blast, because that's not what I'm here for. But I would tell you this, that no, the end of hostilities does not translate to the streets. It does not translate to the county jails. It's a mutual respecting and words that were given in prison. There was no one that gave their word the streets were going to be North and South collaborations. Now, there are dudes that probably do business together, people that have been locked up, people that have functioned during the end of hostilities that have gotten out and don't have no aggression, no animosity towards the other group. See, you have guys that have done different time. Back in my days, it was, we understand that was the opposition, or we understood, we knew that these guys were a threat. We knew there was targets. We knew all that. But at the same time, we stood ready, so we didn't have to get ready. But we also knew that they were a violent group, a vicious group, speaking about the Southerners, right? And that we need to be on our toes, and we need to respect their boundaries like they were respecting ours, right? And that's how I did time. It's changed. A lot of these youngsters and a lot of guys that are doing time during this end of hostilities, they come out preaching a different type of gospel. You see, like the dudes from Florencia that consistently say in all their different interviews that they don't have no problems with Nortenos. And a lot of Southsiders don't. There's a lot of Southerners from LA, from down south, Southern California, that ain't really tripping off Nortenos. First and foremost, they don't see them. They're not in that area, so they don't really care about them. And then when they go to prison, they're on yards with respect for each other. And in some cases, they're having conversations. They're playing handball, basketball. I've even heard of certain groups selling up. I don't know if that's the truth or not. So they have a different mentality when it comes to North and South, whereas you have guys that haven't been locked up or were locked up during the bad times when there was guerra, when there was war, and they have a bone to pick because they've tasted sangre, or they've fought, or they've gotten stabbed, and I understand that. Now with Nortenos, it's a little bit of a different story, because there are Southsiders that do have established up north, the upstaters, and do put in their work and do their thing up there. It's more like a Hatfield and McCoy thing. You got Norteños versus Sureños. That's just what you have upstate. And that's because upstaters were able to establish a foothold in certain pockets in certain cities, mostly all cities, right? So that's just how that is. So that is more of, yes, it's considered North and South beef, but it's more of a Hatfield McCoy thing. It's more of a local thing. Okay. Whereas in Southern California, they're not tripping off Norteños too much because they're not in their area. They're more worried about blue on blue, about other Southerners, other barrios, old school shit. So no, the end of hostilities does not translate to the streets. And that's because they have not been told to conform to it. The end of hostilities was created so that the guys could get out of the back, and so that they could be given their due process and their social status of equality on the yard and given some fresh air. On the streets, people got more of a gangbanging mentality. It's all about their barrios. It's all about the enemies and controlling them streets the way they do, whether it's from the drug trade or whatever it is, right? So no, it don't translate, and I don't think it ever will. You have a lot of people that are stubborn, that don't like politics in the first place, so they don't want to hear that. Okay, now that old saying, the inside controls the outside, most definitely in some cases, but in something as big as an issue that was created in North and South. Now you got to understand, North and South have been fighting for over 50 years, right? There's been beef there. So it's hard to just, this has been indoctrinated, embedded in people's minds, in their education, especially up north. I know you're told the Southerners are the opposition. The opposition is just, it's bred into you, right? Southerners, not necessarily so, They have different reglas and different things that is told to them. But this propaganda that is fed to the Nortenos is to establish and dominate your homeland and stop invaders from invading, right? And all this, and Southerners being the invaders. So they come out with an animosity, right, for Southsiders, whereas Southsiders don't come out with the animosity for Northerners. Now, the Southerners, I'm going to be doing another video, which is basically a part 2 to this, who controls the one group that controls all the prison yards in California. And there's going to be a lot of hurt feelings, but it's going to be facts and truth. So anyways, to answer the question, why the end of hostilities in California State Prison has not changed or has not changed the streets, it's because the streets is too vast, it's too big, and what the end of hostilities encompasses and what it's about is not about the streets. It's about prison. It's something when you go into prison that has been established. The streets is a whole different thing. It's why Wild West, open season for everyone. That's just how that is, man. So I hope I answered that question to the best of my abilities. Again, I never been locked up while the end of hostilities was being utilized, right? I'm sure it was mind-blowing for me when it happened, and I'm sure it's mind-blowing for those who are actually, especially for Northern California guys, you know, guys that have beefed with Southerners their whole life, to get locked up and to be told that, hey, now you have to work hand in hand, do business with. You know, I could tell you guys a story. I might tell it about a homeboy and what he went through. Maybe I'll tell it, maybe I won't. I don't know. Anyways, with that being said, thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle, and strive for what I honestly and truly believe in. That's the betterment of all people, north, south, doesn't matter. And with that being said, man, make sure that you guys go tap in with Barrio Liquors, because that's what this video is sponsored by. Barrio Liquors in Turlock, California, the best liquor store in the Central Valley. Go pull up, go get you something cold to drink. Also by Sticks and Stones Yard Service in Tucson, Arizona. If you're in the Tucson area, you need an estimate on some yard work, go hit up Sticks and Stones. With that being said, bang, bang.